So on today's episode of What's in the Box, we are taking a look at a bike that I've had my eye on for quite a while. One of the main reasons I wanted to check this thing out is because it does have Flight Attendant on it, which is RockShox's version of Live Valve from Fox. Bikes are getting more computery, if that's a term.
Like what?
So I have behind me currently the giant Trance X Advanced 29er SE NA large. It's also a pro edition. From fast, rowdy descents to technical terrain, this progressive trail bike gives you active suspension, adjustable frame geometry, and everything you need to up your single track game. Again, I can't help but read their hooks for these bikes. If all of their hooks were true, you would be the best cyclist in the world just from buying their bike. And I don't know, I enjoy reading them, I like them. Don't stop doing them, I like them. Let's go through the specs first, do a rundown, let's weigh it, and then I'll give you my first impressions. So again, this is the Trance X, so it does have more travel than the regular Trance. You've got 150 millimeters of travel in the fork, the rear end has 135 millimeters of travel, and this frame does have the flip chip. The flip chip, if you did not know, can change the geometry of the bike. We've went over this plenty of times before. The color of this bike is called Messier Gold and Black. Messier. It's a messier gold and black. The front fork is a RockShox Lyric Ultimate with Flight Attendant. It does have 44 millimeter offset and it is 150 millimeters of travel. It does have the Maxwell Ultimate as well. The rear shock is the RockShox Super Deluxe Ultimate Flight Attendant, trunnion mounted, custom tuned for Giant. We'll get into all of that, don't worry. The handlebars are actually Giant Contact SLRs, so they are carbon, which is great. They come in at a 780 with 20 millimeters of rise, not terrible. The other stuff is just your standard aluminum Giant Contact. Not bad stuff at all, but not like top end of the line amazing. It is the SL, so it is lighter, which is great. And then the seat post, which I am super glad they started doing this, is the Trance X Travel Adjustable Dropper. So this dropper post, you can actually adjust how much travel it has. And I love that because there's been so many times when somebody comes in and you go to fit them on a bicycle or something, and the bike actually does fit pretty good, but it's got a like 9 feet long dropper post on it. And if you didn't know, the dropper posts that you put on these bikes, you want them when they're fully extended to be where you typically would ride your bicycle at. You kind of have to account for that. You know, this dropper post right here, if it wasn't adjustable, that's as low as the seat would go. So now that it's adjustable though, you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to scramble and find another dropper post for your brand new bicycle because the old one didn't work right. Along with the Flight Attendant, everything on this is GX Eagle Axis, which I really enjoy this stuff, guys. So the shifter and the rear derailleur is GX Eagle Axis. That means it is wireless and it is electronic, so no cables necessary. The brakes are TRP, which I believe stands for Tektro Race Product. Anyway, they're TRP Trail Evos, 4 pistons, a 200 disc in the front and a 180 in the rear. Super nice brakes. Appropriately, because this bike retails at like $8,500, I think. Yes, this bike retails at $8,500. I think that it should be completely GX, which it is. So you are getting a GX cassette, you are getting a GX chain. So this is a complete GX build. The crankset is also actually a little bit nicer than GX. It's the SRAM X01 Eagle Flight Attendant crank. We'll get to why it is a flight attendant. The rims are also TRX 229 hookless carbon rims. The inner diameter is 30 millimeters, so you can run, wide trail tires on it. That's appropriate for this bike. So let's jump to the weight, and then we will actually get to my first impressions.
Coupon for 25% off at if you're going to be up there anytime soon. I don't know when I'll get there.
For a Trance X, something with 150 millimeters of travel, to be that close to 30, I think is pretty good. All of the electronics on this thing actually do increase the weight. If this was a completely cable actuated bike, it would probably weigh actually a little bit less, but who wants that? We want all the little fun gadgets. I am a gadget guy, I love gadgets. Let's get into this flight attendant system because I think it's super cool, but I'm also, when it comes to the cycling world, I don't like to be in on the first trial run of certain things. Flight attendant's been out for, or at least announced for like a year now, right? And they've been testing it for 9 years, so there's a lot of testing behind it. And basically, flight attendant is RockShox's answer to Fox Live Valve. What flight attendant does is it's got an accelerometer in there, so it's gonna know whether you're going uphill or downhill. The suspension defaults to wide open, which I like. When that accelerometer starts to kick up and you go uphill, it is going to wrench down on your compression. All it does is adjust your compression on there. It does not do rebound, anything like that. It is going to put your compression where it needs to be for you to pedal more efficiently, which I think is super cool. I think I would love to ride something like that and actually see how well it would work. But do I think you need something like this? I will put a link down below. Dylan Johnson actually did a really good video where he just did some anecdotal evidence on lockouts, whether or not you have to use your lockout, whether or not it makes you faster. And it wasn't super scientific, other than Specialized and Giant and these other companies have put some time and money into lockout systems and whether or not they actually make a difference. And turns out, for the most part, they don't make that much of a difference, especially on a long climb, riding your bike locked out or wide open. It's gonna feel faster with it locked out, but your times, or at least his times, were near identical. And he went up a climb and kept the same power numbers for the entire time. Now, you're not gonna be able to count for wind and all that, and still, times were so close together, actually spot on a couple times, that it had me second guessing whether or not I even need to lock out my fork and my rear shock. I really only do it now if it's a mental thing. Like if I'm dying climbing for a while, I can hit that lockout and it's like, whew, all right, it must be easier now. But I think a lot of it is a mental thing. I don't think it's actually helping as much as we perceive. I could be completely wrong. Dylan could be completely wrong. If you guys have a study that you have found that is actually out there and available, please let me know. I would love for somebody to tell me that whenever I actually use my lockout, it makes a big difference, because I was a die-hard remote lockout guy until that. Then I ripped that stuff all off, and I've been racing now for the past 2 years without a lockout and have been doing exactly the same, if not better. I'm not saying that to get you to shy away from flight attendant, because I still think the flight attendant system is just intriguing in and of itself, but I don't think it's gonna be such a game changer that every single bike is gonna come with it. Now, what I do think is cool with the flight attendant though, is you can change your compression settings through your phone based on what trail you're gonna ride, and you can save profiles. So if you're gonna ride close to home, my home, which is in Charlotte, and ride something like Whitewater Center that's a pretty easy trail, you can have a setting for that. So you can dial in your suspension for the Whitewater Center. And then let's say you take this bike up to Pisgah and you're riding something gnarly Take your phone out and you can have your settings for Pisgah. No more do you actually have to tweak stuff when you get up there. If you're a tinkerer kind of guy, you can already have it preset in your phone and just select it. Now, they do claim that the battery life on this thing is about 24 hours of constant use, which is pretty good. Most of us don't ride for a steady 24 hours. If I was riding hard, it'd be about 2 weeks worth of riding. So every couple weeks you'd have to actually charge your batteries if you're riding a lot. But the one thing that I do like about it is it just defaults to wide open. So once it dies, you're not stuck with something that's not gonna work. You can still ride your bike just fine. You're just not gonna have that ability to actually lock your fork and your rear shock out. So of course, guys, I love the Trance platform. You know I'm a big fan, so when it comes to a bike like this, I'm definitely biased. I do think the Maestro suspension design is one of the better ones on the market, but I think it's one of the better ones on the market because Giant got the patent early enough. Like I've said in previous videos, it is a rocker on the top and a rocker on the bottom, and so many companies use a variation of this suspension design, and you just have to change one thing to get around the patent. Just like I've said before, Niner takes that bottom rocker, flips it upside down, and it's almost the same thing. What I look for in a good suspension design though is simplicity, how well it actually works, and how light the bike is. And the Maestro suspension design is always checked off all three of those boxes. This is relatively light for a 150 travel bike. It's 30 pounds. I mean, it's super easy to work on. You know, I can have this rocker off in 5 minutes and start overhauling it. And it works really good. This rear wheel travels in a pretty vertical straight line. Right at the top, there's a little curve, but you know, you're gonna have that. Whereas a single pivot design the entire time that thing's working, it's kind of working against you a little bit, but single pivot bikes are super light and they are made to be raced in a cross-country environment. Last but not least, let's talk about this color. This color looks like something that would be on a 95 Toyota minivan. Look, if you like it, this is all subjective, so don't be offended. But I think this champagne color is just odd. I mean, I love the translucent nature, or whatever you want to call it, to where when you shine light on it, it has a green tint. That's pretty cool. But it also looks like maybe your 10-year-old kid thought it'd be funny to take a pee on your minivan. That's what I see. I don't like that color, but again, I've never been a color guy. I would 100% buy this bike and ride the crap out of it being this color, even if I didn't like it, because I could care less what color my bike is. Maybe I'm just getting old. I have no idea. I don't care for that. Oh, last thing that I forgot to tell you guys. So I like the Flight Attendant better than I do Fox's Live Valve, and I will tell you the only reason that is because Fox's Live Valve has cables galore. Cables everywhere, and they've got these little plastic pieces to hold all the cables together so you don't accidentally rip one out, because there's warnings when you're building it, don't ever just yank one out while the system's on. And I'm just like, it's a mountain bike, dude. I'm yanking that out at some point. At least this system here has no cables. It might look a little bulbous and you do have a battery on there, but there's no cables, it's wireless. I really like that. Bring it back down to what I don't like about it though, is you have to have a dub crank at the moment, because you do have to have this axis pedal sensor, whatever, that goes into your crank, so they know what your cadence is and kind of how fast you're going, that kind of thing. So that's the knock, that's the positives. But if I had to rate this bike, I'm gonna give it maybe the SE Trance X. I'm gonna give it like an 8 out of 10. And again, this is all completely subjective and I'm just spitballing at the wall. So if I hate the bike or whatever, I'm gonna tell you. But I think the Trance platform is one of the best. I am definitely biased in that regard, but this bike weighs only 30 pounds. It's got some fun gadgets on it that I hope continue to operate the way they should. It does have electronic shifting, which I am a huge fan of, and hopefully I will have that on my bike one day. Give it an 8 out of 10, what do you say? But if you guys have any questions, please ask them down below. Thank you all for supporting me. Please, if you want to support the channel, you can definitely do it by liking, subscribing, commenting, help the videos get out there, and go buy some Flow. Definitely buy it from your local bike shop if they carry it, but you get a discount code if not. A discount code is Mossy20, put that in. They do give me a cut, so that's how you can support. Thank you for all you've done. I love you guys, bye.